Hi, everyone. It's Tania DaSilva, the Clinical Director of Behavior Matters. I am a child, youth, and family counselor. I'm also a mother of two, and I am going to talk to you about sharing today and why I don't force my girls to share all the time, and why, when I'm teaching our clients about sharing, I also don't teach them that they have to share all the time. So, this is going to make sense at the end of this podcast, video class, whatever we want to call it. So, first thing I want you to think about is I want you to imagine that you are sitting with your phone and you're on your phone, you're using it, and someone comes over and they're like, "Hey, I want that." And they try and take it from you. And then, someone else that's sitting near you is like, "Oh, they want that. You should share that with them." Think about how you would be left feeling, right? Most of us would be confused, frustrated, feel disrespected, feel angry, right? We'd be like, "This is mine. I don't need to share this with you. And I'm not going to share this with you. Like, I'm actively using it and it belongs to me." So we honestly sometimes put our kids in a similar position, right? Where they are playing with something, they're using something, and someone comes and tries to grab it. And we're like, "Oh, just share it with them. You need to share," right? So I know that the intention is good, right? We're like, okay, you do need to share. You need to learn this really important social skill, right? Again, we teach this skill in our programs because we know how important it is, but we want to make sure that we're doing it properly, where we are teaching them to share while still teaching them how to set appropriate boundaries when needed. So we know that there are so many reasons as to why sharing is important. So it builds cooperation. It obviously helps group play improve. It makes, relationships and interactions a lot more fun, a lot easier. It just, again, teaches trust and that things could be reciprocal in terms of I trust that, if I share with you, you're going to share with me. If I give you a turn, you'll give me a turn, right? It also just makes us trust that when we are playing with people, that it will be fun, right? That we'll work together, that we'll be able to share and essentially, enjoy our time together. And it really just helps kids experience a more positive social interaction, right? So we know that there's a lot of benefits of sharing. Even as adults, right? When we're making friends, it would be very difficult for us to be married to someone or be friends with someone who never shared, right? Who always kind of kept everything to themselves or tried to take everything from us, right? We wouldn't feel comfortable or happy in that type of relationship either. So we know that teaching, turn taking and sharing is a very crucial skill for childhood, but also obviously as we age, because relationships are back and forth, right? So we know why this is so important. But what we also want to know, and we want to remember, is that sharing needs to be taught, but it needs to be taught within reason. And it can't be at the expense of boundaries. And that's where sometimes we miss the mark, right? We do it at the expense of our child's boundaries. So this is why I want to talk about why forcing our kids to share can sometimes backfire. So there are a couple of things that happen. So first and foremost, it can create, I shouldn't say it does always, but it can create resentment when we're forcing our child to constantly give something up, right, to other people. It also reinforces a lot of the time that pushy and demanding behavior from the other person. So whether that's their sibling or other friends or other kids, right, we're reinforcing that unhelpful way of asking for things or trying to get things. It can also undermine their boundaries, their autonomy, their feeling of ownership, their feeling of control. And this is the part that really stands out to me, especially with one daughter specifically, that she is very kind. She's very giving. I sometimes worry about if I'm constantly pushing her to share all the time and to give all the time, because that is in her nature. Am I creating a child that is going to be people pleasing and more passive as she grows up, right? Because she's used to always being like, "Oh, well, you're an easy kid. So just give it to your sister who's crying or give it to that other child who's having a meltdown because they want it." So we really want to be mindful of how pushing to share can backfire. We want to create an environment where our kids aren't people pleasers, right? Where they are not just passive in their interactions, right? Where they know when to be assertive, when to be kind, when to set a boundary, and that they're, feeling like I do have control and I do have ownership. And I know that my parents are all obviously supporting what I want to and not just pushing what is going to make it easier for another child or for my sibling or what's going to make it easier for the environment because, there's other parents around or other people around and it's uncomfortable to have a kid scream over a toy or what they want. So we want to ensure that we're creating a very safe and very supportive environment for our kids to grow and to learn how to share effectively, but also how to set those boundaries. So these are some of the interactions and places that I typically am like, what, I do not force my child to share. I do not ask them to share in these four situations. So If my child has something that is very special to them or very meaningful to them, I am not going to force them to share that because that is something that means a lot to them. So, what we usually do is if it's something that's really special to them, I'm like, you know what, then it might make sense for us to just remove this from the environment. So either not to bring it to an environment that we're going to or to keep it, in the car or somewhere else because this is not something we want to share. So this is probably isn't something to bring out to a situation where we're going to be interacting with other people. Or if people are coming over, again, we can't remove everything, but we can remove a handful of things that feel really special to us that we don't want to share. So that's one thing. Second thing is if they're actively using something. So if they're in the middle of using something, I am not going to be like, oh, sorry, you have to give it to that child because that child wants it, right? They are using it. When they're done using it, then yes, there might be an opportunity for that child to take their turn. And then I always think about these last two as well. So if the other child is being rough or careless or just disrespectful towards their things, it makes sense that they're also not going to want to share because they're worried about how their toys or their objects are going to be treated and if they're going to be destroyed or ruined, right? So it makes sense that we don't want to share that. And lastly, if someone is being entitled or pushy or aggressive, that's also another moment where I'm like, you know what, actually, yeah, you don't have to share with someone if they're asking you in a disrespectful way. And I'm going to put this in terms of us as adults. So, like I said earlier, say I'm on my phone and someone comes and takes my phone. They're like, hey, I need a phone. My phone is dead. I lost it. I'm taking yours. I would be like, no, you're not taking my phone. I need it throughout the day. Maybe I have an extra one, right? Or a different one that you can put your SIM card in, but you are not taking mine. And this is again how I coach my kids around this. Where I'm like, you can say, this is really special to me, so I'm going to play with this one. But here, you can have one of these, right? So I always use this Care Bear example because my daughters have a bunch of Care Bears, but my one daughter really loves the pink one. So I'm like, you have to share some of your Care Bears. You can decide that you don't want to share the pink one because that's your favorite, but you have to let other people play with, the purple one or the blue one, etc. So that you're all playing together. That's obviously how that comes up. Now I want you to imagine that like right now, I'm actively recording this. If someone were to come into my office and be like, I'm taking your computer, I'd be like, no, you're not. I'm literally in the middle of using it. You can't have it. Right. So again, this is how these things relate. And I feel like it's so important for us as adults to think about what am I asking of my child and how would I act if I was in a similar situation. So it's the same with like if someone is being rough or careless with their things. If someone borrowed my car and was speeding down the street and scratching it up against poles or whatever curbs, I would be like, I am not letting you use this, right? Like you're not treating my things properly. Or if someone came in and they were just flat out disrespectful or entitled, or they're like, this is mine, I'm taking it, of course I would be a lot more resistant, right? Because why are you speaking to me that way? So this is what we want to think about as well, right? So what are the moments that I am not going to force my child to share? I am actually going to help them set a boundary, right? A respectful and kind boundary around this is my special thing. This means a lot to me. I'm not sharing this, or I'm still using this, I'll let you know when I'm done. Or you know what, like you're throwing it, you're breaking it. So I don't want you to use it because I don't want it to be ruined. Or the way you're asking me is really rude and mean, and it's not making me feel like I want to share with you or I want to play with you, right? So again, we want to really build these skills. So another thing that I want to highlight here is what do we actually teach? So I like to teach three different things. So one of the first things I teach is turn taking, sharing, and then I go into giving. So turn taking is essentially you go, then I go. Sharing is, hey, let's use this together. And then giving is here, take it, you play with it, I'm playing with something else. So I'll give you a couple of examples of how this could look. Say that my daughter is playing in her, which we have like a pretend grocery store, right? So turn taking would be, we have only one cart, right? So she would take a turn, someone else would take a turn, right? They would have to take turns in terms of using the cart because we only have one. In terms of sharing, the grocery store is pretty big. There could be at least 2 to 3 kids in there, right? So they can share the grocery store and play together. Giving would be, let's say one of the kids is like, hey, can I have the carrots that you have in your cart? My daughter might be like, yeah, here, take this. And they might grab, a pepper, a cucumber, or something else that they have on the shelf. So that's what that would look like. Now, let's say our kids are outside. Again, we have one of those remote control cars that you can sit in and kind of drive back and forth on. Turn taking would be, okay, I'm going to ride it to the end of the driveway. Then that kid is going to get in, ride it to the top of the driveway, and we're going to take turns back and forth. Sharing would be both of us can sit in it, right? So we're going to drive it together. And then giving would be like, hey, you know what? I've been riding that all morning. Go ahead. You can have a turn, right? So we want to essentially teach them the difference. And then we want to think about the social situations that we're in. So, especially in our home, if we're having a play date, what are certain things that we can take turns on? What are certain things that we can share? And what are certain things that we can give? Same when we're out in other social environments, etc. As a parent, you want to constantly scan for what are the different options here? What would make sense, right? So this is a really crucial one to teach. And this is something that we can obviously model with them, with their siblings, with us, right? It's an easy one to develop as soon as we're aware of it. Sometimes we're just not aware of the different options and to actually scan for where do these come up. So the biggest question I find comes up when I'm talking to parents about sharing is number one, how do I build their ability to share? And number two, how do I deal with those awkward, uncomfortable feelings that come up either when like one of my kids is having a meltdown and I'm just, pushing my easier, quote unquote, child to just give them what they want so they stop having a meltdown. And again, someone else's child is having a meltdown and it's feeling really awkward and uncomfortable. So again, I'm kind of just like pushing my child to give what they want. Or there's the opposite of it, right? Where my child's having a meltdown and I'm just hoping that someone else just gives my kid what they want so that they calm down, right? Like there's a lot of those awkward feelings around interactions where sometimes we do the things that are actually reinforcing the behavior or teaching our kids the opposite of what we want to teach them, right? So we're going to get into all that. So basically, when I think about how to actually teach kids about sharing, building that skill. So we've already talked about it, but essentially you want to teach them the difference between turn taking, sharing, and giving. And you really want to practice that with them. So how can we practice turn taking? How can we practice sharing? How can we practice giving? How can we practice waiting our turn or finding something else to do, right? While we wait for our turn. So actually like physically standing there and just waiting until it's our turn or finding something else as, whatever that thing is that we want is being used. So you want to look for moments to teach that. The second part is problem solving. So when I kind of already touched on this a little bit, but you want to look at finding alternatives, right? So what can I do while I wait? What else can I play with? What other options are there, right? Also trading. So trading is a really good one where, okay, I'm using my purple marker and I don't need this anymore. I want the pink one. So maybe I can ask someone and be like, hey, can we trade? Can you take the purple one and I'll take the pink one? Or cars, I have a blue car. I like the red one. Can we trade, right? So we're teaching them problem solving. Can we trade? Can we find something else to do, right? Can we take turns? Can we share, right? So this is all the problem solving that again is super important when we are trying to teach our kids about, sharing and in a way that is effective, right? So there are a couple other things here and I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, but we talked a little bit about, where am I here? We talked a little bit about the problem solving. Oh, this is what I wanted to talk about. Teaching scripts. So our kids, most of our kids, especially because we're teaching sharing when they're younger, like this is typically for our kids that are like 6 and under. If your kids are still struggling at 6, 7, 8, obviously you can use this as well. But typically these are skills that we focus on with the kids kind of 6 and under so that they can obviously develop that foundational piece of it. But for some, they might be missing it or they might be struggling. So again, you can obviously use this for any child that needs support in learning how to share. But scripts are a really big one. So a lot of our kids don't have the actual language to tell someone else what they're feeling or what they need. So I look at scripting in terms of categories. So there is how to ask, how to set a boundary, and then how to problem solve, right? So these are the 3 areas of scripts that we want to help them practice. I'm going to teach my child how to ask. So, hey, can I play with that? Hey, can I have a turn? Can we take turns, right? So you want to give them that language so they actually learn how to ask. You also want to give them the language around boundaries. So let's say that again, this is something really special to me. We want to teach them the wording. Hey, this is my favorite thing. I don't want to share this, but you can play with one of these. Or, hey, I'm still using this. I'll let you know when I'm done. So we want to build that script there. And then we also want to teach problem solving. So, why don't you use this one instead? I'm still using this. Can we trade, right? So we really want to give them the script. And the way that you can also practice this is I actually like to do role plays where I actually act out the version that isn't helpful because most kids find it funny. And then I'll act out a version that is helpful, right? So me asking in a really aggressive way or me not setting a boundary, right? And then me asking in, an assertive way or me setting a boundary so they see the difference. And then I'll also get them to role play it with me. So them practicing saying it and doing it, because that's going to help build their confidence so they can actually do it in the moment. But scripting is something that I find is really important. and that a lot of them don't know how to do, right? So they need that practice with us. Something else I like to teach them that I find helps avoid problems, I kind of call this the put down outcome. So for a lot of our kids, and I'm sure many of you are going to be like, yep, this happens all the time. We have a child that's, playing with this marker and they're like, oh, I see something over there, drop the marker, they run off. They turn back and they see someone picking up the marker that they're using, and it's a complete meltdown. So, what I like to teach kids is that when you put something down, you are telling other kids that you are done with it. So, if you're putting it down, make sure that you're actually done with it. We've all seen it. Something barely drops the floor, there's another kid already swiping it and playing with it. So, this is another really important thing to teach, right? That actually goes into sharing, right? If you are still using something, make sure that it is clear that you're still using it, because as soon as you put it down, it is signaling to other people that it's available. The same way it's signaling to you that it's available, right? If someone's done with it, you're going to pick it up. Okay, now it's your turn, right? They are no longer using it. They've walked away from it. So that's always, I think, a very important one to highlight, because a lot of kids have a really hard time with this. And this is one that sometimes I find families will implement, and it's something that can really just change those social interactions, because now their kids are like, oh, yeah, I'm not done with this, so I'm not going to put it down yet. So even around, I always use this example of if you're at an art station and you're coloring and you're, doing what you're doing, and then you get up and leave, someone else might come sit in that chair and now start drawing, right? And they're not going to want to get up when you come back because you left, and now they're engaging in that activity. So that is definitely something else that I always like to couple with sharing. So obviously, when we're thinking about boundaries, we want to teach them how to set boundaries. We also want to connect it to it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. So a lot of kids might try and set a boundary and they might be frustrated. So they might do it in a very angry or aggressive way, and that's not helpful. Or they might do it in a scared way. So I actually play a game where I'm like, okay, let's say, this is my favorite and I don't want to share. I'm still using it. So I'll let you know when I'm done. Let's do it in a scared voice. Let's do it in an angry voice. Let's do it in a kind voice, right? So we can start again practicing that awareness about how am I saying it and how are other people receiving it. And this is again where we can kind of play into empathy and perspective taking, which is again very crucial and very important in just social skills in general. But I like to kind of highlight, building empathy without forcing anything, right? So kind of just letting that space be that space where we're noticing all the different feelings before we actually move into coaching. So I give it a minute. But let's say that there's a situation where my daughter or someone else, doesn't matter, they're playing with something, right? They're in the middle of playing, and then some other, child wants it, and now they're really upset and they're crying. I might be like, oh, that looks really hard, right? They really want it. They're really upset. They're crying, right? Like that's really tough. But, you're also still using it and you're not done, right? And that also feels kind of tough, where it's like, well, I get you're upset, but I got it first. I'm still using it. So we really want to build that empathy around the feeling of someone who's using it and then someone who wants it, right? And how both of those feelings can be hard and both of those feelings can coexist, and, leave space for that before we start moving into coaching, right? Where it's like, okay, so how can we ask to share? How can we find something else to do? How can we set a boundary, right? I think that empathy piece is also important because they start to see each other's feelings. It also helps when we're trying to develop that giving step, where sometimes I actually don't really care. I'm using this purple marker, but it doesn't really matter to me. There's a different color purple that I can use, but maybe someone really wants this color purple because it matches, the color of the superhero that they're trying to draw. So that might signal, oh, this means a lot more to you than me. So here, take it. I don't mind giving it away. I'm going to grab something else instead. And that's where that point of view and that empathy and that perspective taking, again, is really crucial. Couple other things I want to highlight before we wrap up. I also like to teach like the social cause and effect, but there is something I want to be mindful of here, because I think a lot of us as parents really highlight this one point. So what I do like to teach kids first is that sharing usually leads to more fun, right? More positive interactions, better friendships, makes things a lot easier, makes people more likely to want to play with us. And it can increase the chances of other people wanting to share with us. We don't want to just lead with that. So some of us are like, well, if you share they'll share with you too. That's not always the case, right? So sometimes kids might not share because it's their favorite thing. They're using it. We didn't treat their stuff properly, right? So we obviously want to highlight that it will increase the chances, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we will 100% get that. And what I always also highlight here is if we're continuously playing with a child that doesn't share and it doesn't feel easy and it doesn't feel fun, we can also set a different boundary and be like, I don't want to keep playing with this person because they're not sharing, right? They're not being respectful of my my things. This isn't fun, right? So again, we're teaching them so many different skills from this conversation that are it's going to age with them as they age up, into, like obviously preteens and teenagers and adults, right? These are all crucial skills that we're building these foundations for, that we're essentially setting them up for success as they age. So last couple things I want to touch on. So kind of like off point of why someone might not want to share. I also like to highlight just treating people's things respectfully, right? So if someone is not treating our stuff respectfully, if we're not treating their things respectfully, they also might not want to share. And again, that makes sense, right? If someone is breaking our things, treating them in a rough way, it makes sense that maybe we're like, I don't want to share, or maybe they're like, I don't want to share with you. And I think as a parent, there's also opportunities where sometimes I've jumped in during play dates where I'm like, okay, so hold on, we're being really rough with this, right? This is how we play with it, right? So I'll model how to set that boundary, the expectation. And if it's not being respected, I will again model to my child how to remove something, right? And how to set that boundary. It's like, if you're not going to treat my things with respect, then it's not going to be an option. And I'll do that to my child too. If she's not treating things with respect, I'm like, nope, sorry, you're not going to ruin someone else's stuff, right? This is not how we treat people's things. And I think, again, that is a very important thing to highlight, where it's like, you know what, this actually feels like it's really hard for us to play with this properly. So we're just going to remove it as an option so we don't break it. Or this feels really hard for you to share. So you know what, I'm going to take this away and I'm going to give this to so-and-so's mom so she could put it away, because I don't want you ruining other people's things, right? So that is another aspect that we want to be able to, and always highlighting kind of what I want to finish off with here is that you want to make sure you're setting the same expectation for your child that you are for other kids, right? So what I mean by that is, if I'm setting the expectation that my child needs to wait their turn if someone else is using something, I'm also going to set that same expectation for another child, where I'm like, sorry, she's still using this, so you also need to wait your turn, right? We want to make sure that what we are expecting our child to do, we're also expecting other kids to do, and vice versa, right? It needs to be the same across the board. This also helps with those uncomfortable feelings. So if you're getting, worried about correcting someone else's child, if they keep taking things out of your child's hand and you're like, oh, this is awkward. But if you set the same expectation, it makes it less awkward. Where I'm like, no, sorry, actually, she's still playing with this. And I'll coach and I'll be like, you can say, hey, I'm not done with this. Or I can be like, you know what, why don't you find something else to play with, right? I am modeling, I'm coaching, I am helping both of them learn how to navigate that situation when it's appropriate. So if I'm doing the same thing for my child, if my child's grabbing something out of someone's hand and I'm like, nope, sorry, and I take that out of her hand and I'm like, they were playing with this first, you need to find something else, right? That sets a very neutral playing field where it's like we're holding both kids to the same expectations. And that's something I'm very mindful of, right? Because as much as we want to help our child advocate, and I'm thinking about my child in particular, advocate to set boundaries, right? I also need to ensure that I am setting her up where she needs to also learn how to accept other people's boundaries, right? So we want to kind of set that across the board. So anyways, this is always an interesting topic. I think my kids right now, it's so timely because my kids are within that age range. So I thought it would be just a good call to jump on and do a super short little video podcast. I don't even know what to call this on this, but I hope this helped. I hope this left you with some good tidbits, some good things to put into practice. And yeah, again, I typically look at this for kids under 6. That's usually when a lot of the sharing stuff is happening. But if you're like, oh, my 7-year-old, my 9-year-old would benefit from this, again, take this, right, and use it with them as well. It helps build the skill regardless. So thanks so much for listening, for tuning in. And if there are any topics that you'd like me to talk about, just comment below, send us an email. I'm always kind of looking for different things to chat about. So thanks for logging on, and have a great rest of your evening, whatever point you're in your day. Yeah, take care.